discussing today.
We have become one of the most litigious societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
This is incredible. Trump administration officials have been sending babies and other young children. Oh, hold on. Oh. Just, I think I'm going to have to hand this off. Yeah. Sorry.
The rich and powerful reminding you just how virtuous they are.
We will not keep kids in child internment camps.
You think any of these people really care about family separation?
Nursing infants being ripped away from their mothers.
It's not just illegal immigrants who are separated from their children.
They aren't coming back.
This is one of those moments that tells you everything about our ruling class. They care far more about foreigners than about their own people.
Children incarcerated in warehouses.
No matter what they tell you, this is not about helping children.
Every human being with a sense of compassion and decency should be outraged.
There's no cost to them. The cost is entirely on you.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to a brand new broadcast, Focal Point on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Brian Fisher, congenial, convivial, and amiable as always. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative radio, conservative talk radio. And you are listening to the American Family Radio Network. Good to have you in the conversation today. Primarily today, we're going to be talking about immigration and this fracas, this brouhaha that the media is continuing to feed. I mean, they're pouring oil on this fire every chance they get. You know, what you don't have when you watch the evening news on the networks or watch CNN, you're not watching news. You are watching arsonists at work. They are trying to generate a conflagration down at the border that is going to consume Donald Trump and consume the Republican Party. So we'll talk about that as the program develops. Now, before we get into all of that, we're going to turn our attention to the book of Isaiah. We're starting through Isaiah in our daily time in the Word. Remember, we're using a schedule that'll take you through the Word of God in 3 years. Every day there's a different passage of Scripture for you to read in your own copy of the Word of God, and then there's a prayer for you to pray back to God that involves the very words and the concepts and the themes of the passage of Scripture that you have just read. So you can not only read the Word of God, you can pray it back to Him, and that can be found at pray.afa.net, pray.afa.net. Now, one of the things that we're going to be doing in the next several weeks as we go through Isaiah is we're going to spend a lot of time praying for our nation and repenting on behalf of our nation. As you read the description in Isaiah of Jerusalem, of Judah, of Israel, you're going to find a lot that you recognize, because if you look around our culture, you will be able to see the same things that Isaiah saw in his day. So we want to look at these things. We want to understand the world as it was in Isaiah's day, and then we want to take that and lay it alongside it, what's going on in our contemporary culture today, and see where we line up and where we don't, and where we need to repent and beg the God of heaven for forgiveness. Now, the beginning of Isaiah chapter 1, we see that this is a vision of Isaiah, which he saw during the days of several kings. So this was a period of time from 740 BC to 681 BC, and Isaiah is receiving revelations from God, visions of God, all the way through this time period. You know, sometimes we think that the prophet gets one vision, sits down, writes it all down. But oftentimes, and you'll see this in the prophets as you read them, especially the minor prophets, you realize that some of these prophetic visions may have only occupied 6 or 8 verses. Might not be a whole chapter. Maybe a whole chapter comprises 2 or 3 different visions, 2 or 3 different prophetic words. So that's one of the things that you need to be aware of when you're looking for a theme that runs through an entire chapter. You know, you may have 2 or 3 separate words that were delivered at different periods of time to the prophet. He's just recording them in the order that he received them, not necessarily all on the same day. Now here's what Isaiah says. Here is his word of rebuke to the people of his day. Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord Yahweh has spoken. Children have I reared and brought up, but they have rebelled against me. The ox knows its owner, the donkey its master's crib, but Israel does not know. My people do not understand. In other words, you look around our culture today at people that have no use for God. They have no interest in developing a relationship with God. They despise God. They despise the Word of God. They reject everything about God. They're rejecting the one who actually made them and by right should own them in every part of their lives. And he says what this does is it makes oxen smarter than unbelievers in contemporary America. Because the ox knows the owner, it makes donkeys smarter than people who reject God in our day, because at least the donkey knows the crib that its master has provided for him and goes back there for food. So this is the lament that Isaiah brings forward. Ah, sinful nation, a people laden with iniquity, offspring of evildoers, children who deal corruptly, or sons who deal corruptly. They have forsaken the Lord. They have despised the Holy One of Israel. They are utterly estranged. Why will you be struck down? Why will you continue to rebel? In other words, there's an alternative here. You don't have to be consumed with this kind of decay and rot and corruption. The whole head is sick, and the whole heart is faint. From the sole of the foot even to the head, there is no soundness in it, but bruises and sores and raw wounds that are not pressed out or bound up or softened with oil. Your country, Isaiah says in verse 7, lies desolate. Now here's the appeal of Isaiah. Look, your country's in bad shape. It's filled with corruption. It's filled with decay from the head to the bottom of your feet, from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. It's hard not to look at America and make the same assessment about where we are at. God says, I'm not even going to listen to your prayers, because though you make many prayers, I will not listen, because your hands are full of blood. And the hands that we lift to God in prayer, we have the blood of 60 million innocent babies on our hands. And that's what God's going to see when he looks at our prayers. So he says, wash yourselves. It can happen. Make yourselves clean. Remove the evil of your deeds from before my eyes. Cease to do evil. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Correct oppression. Bring justice to the fatherless. Plead the widow's cause. Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they are red like crimson, they shall become like wool. So what he's saying is, look, there is healing available. There is renewal that's available. We have to come clean of our evil deeds. We have to renounce them before God. We need to reject them. And then we need to cast ourselves at the foot of the cross, and the blood of Christ will cleanse us from all sins. Our sins, though they are as scarlet, will become as white as wool. So let's go to prayer together for what we have read here. Lord God, we worship you this day as the Lord Almighty, the Mighty One of Israel. You are a God of great power, a God who gains relief from your foes and who avenges yourself on your enemies. We acknowledge on behalf of our city and our nation that you have reared us and brought us up as children, yet in many ways we have rebelled against you. Even though the ox knows its master and the donkey his owner's manger, we do not know you or understand that you are the one who has given us life and freedom. We are a sinful nation and a people loaded with guilt. We have forsaken you. We have spurned you, the Holy One of Israel, and turned our backs on you. Our whole head is injured. Our whole heart is afflicted. We pray this day for our city and for our nation, that we will become a faithful nation, a nation full of justice and a place where righteousness dwells. Protect us from rulers who are rebels and companions of thieves. We ask you to thoroughly purge away our dross and remove all our iniquities. May we be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. Amen.
Hi, I'm David Barton, founder of Wall Builders.
And I'm Tim Barton, the president of Wall Builders. And we want to let you know about an opportunity this summer for 18 to 25-year-olds to come be a part of what we're calling the Leadership Training Program. Actually, the website is wallbuilders.com/leadership training if you want to see more information. But really what we're doing is trying to help young people combat a lot of the nonsense they're learning in academia, things that are anti-American or anti the Bible. And so we actually dig into the Bible, we dig into American history and the Constitution and education, and try to give a really good inoculation against some of the things that they're hearing in academics.
Yeah, Tim, you're exactly right. This is such an excellent opportunity to have the apologetics of the things that they'll face in academia and the culture. So if you're from 18 to 25 years old and you want training in this, and by the way, you get to actually hold the handwritten documents of George Washington and John Adams and other aspects of American history, this is a great opportunity this summer. 2 weeks, go to wallbuilders.com/leadership training. Hope to see you this summer.
Blessed is the man who doesn't walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scoffers. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. One word has proven to be debilitating in our society, the D word, discrimination. What we fail to realize is discrimination is not automatically a dirty concept. We discriminate against thieves and murderers when we send them to prison. We discriminate against sexual predators by keeping them away from children. And yes, we rightly discriminate against men when we keep them out of women's restrooms. According to Psalm 1, we have to discriminate against the counsel of the wicked in order to be blessed. Good thing God isn't debilitated by the D word.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Let's just jump right into this immigration issue. Start off with a couple of things here. And part of what I want to use these early stories to do is to demonstrate to you the utter evil that animates the political left in America. There is malice, there is evil, there is wickedness here, and it drives them. It energizes them. They violate, in the process of pursuing their political objectives, they violate every single principle that the rest of the time they claim are sacred and that they accuse us of violating. Let me give you just some examples here. You might know who Peter Fonda is. He was an easy writer, and I've never cared much for him as an actor, and I even care less for him now as an activist. Now, we've got this immigration crisis going on at the border. What are we going to do with these children that must be separated from their parents when their adult criminal parents are being evaluated and being judged and being sentenced? What do we do with these children? And the left is out there just raising all kinds of dust in the air, trying to make conservatives like you and me feel guilty about the fact that children are being separated from their parents at the border. And again, let's start again clean. We need to remember basic principles here. I'm going to repeat stuff that I've said before because it's important that we lock these fundamental things down and never lose sight of them and never forget about them, because you're not going to hear any of this on CNN. You're not going to hear any of this on NBC. You're not going to hear any of this on CBS. You're not going to hear any of this on MSNBC. You're only going to hear it on conservative outlets like Focal Point and American Family Radio that are guided and governed and controlled by the Word of God. Now remember, Jeff Sessions was right when he says Romans 13 teaches us that we are to be a nation that is a nation of laws, that government has a role, government has a responsibility, and it is to make good laws, and it's the job of government to enforce those laws. There's nothing, if it's a good law, then there is no evil when a government enforces a good law. Nothing wrong with that at all. And so what we need to remember when we look at these children being separated from these parents, in every single case, there are two people to blame, and only two people, maybe only one to blame, and that is the parent or parents. So whatever you do, when you look at those, you're going to hear them sobbing on television. You're going to get heart-rending pictures of these children separated from their parents and isolated in rooms and things like that. Of course it's heart-rending. Of course it's agonizing. We hate it when we see that. We don't want any child to be in that situation. So you have to back up one step and say, okay, whose fault is it that this child that's breaking my heart, whose fault is it that this child is in this place, in this situation, in this condition? The answer in every case is their parents. The parents of that child are the ones that are responsible. So let's keep the blame where it belongs, on the adults who exposed these innocent, helpless children to this kind of fate. So let's not forget that, ever. You got to tack that down, and you got to tamp it into your brain, because you're not going to hear anybody talking about the responsibility of parents in this whole dialogue. Now, Peter Fonda, as an activist, I care less for him as an activist than I do as an actor, and I have never had a very high opinion of him as an actor. Now, here's what Peter Fonda says ought to be done to First Lady Melania Trump. He sent this tweet out today. We should rip Barron Trump, that is Donald and Melania Trump's son, we should rip Barron Trump from his mother's arms and put him in a cage with pedophiles and see if his mother will stand up against the giant boop she is married to. So that's Peter Fonda. We need to kidnap Barron Trump and put him in a cage with a bunch of pedophiles. She actually called the Secret Service on him, and I think they're following up as well. They should, because that's a threat. We should kidnap. I mean, that's a threat to kidnap the son of the president. Peter Fonda talks about Kristen Nielsen. She is the head of DHS, the one responsible to enforce the border policy that was established, by the way, under the Obama administration. Kristen Nielsen, Peter Fonda says, is a lying boop that should be put in a cage and poked at by passersby. This boop should be pilloried in Lafayette Square naked and whipped by passersby while being filmed for posterity. That's Peter Fonda. Here is another one from Peter Fonda. Sarah Sanders is a lying boop, too. Maybe we should take her children away and deport her to Arkansas, giving her children to Stephen Goebbels Miller for safekeeping. All right, so that's one voice heard from on the left. Now, here is another, Antifa. You've heard about them. They're the ones that are disrupting the Trump rallies all over the fruited plain. They are a so-called anti-fascist group, but they're the most fascist group in America, ladies and gentlemen. You know what the word fascist came from? It came from the Latin word is fasces. It's a bundle of sticks. You'd put them in a bundle, and that'd be a pretty potent weapon, and anybody you didn't like, they were acting out. So the police would often use it as like a riot baton. That's what these fascists were, these fasces were. And that's what these anti-fascists are. They're the ones that are carrying around these rods. They're using violence to disrupt these rallies. Now, what they have done is tweeted out a list of over 1,500 immigration and customs enforcement agents' identities. So they're making all of their personal information, all the personal information that can be found on LinkedIn is being made available by this fascist organization to the public, so that the identities, their titles, their locations can be found, so that the fascists can do what fascists do. I mean, this is an invitation to commit violence against immigration agents. Here's where they live. Here are the communities in which they live. Here's their names. Here's their titles. Go to a phone book, go to whatever. You can find them, and then do what fascists do. Now, here's another one. Let's grab this clip, Rob. This is a clip of Kristen Nielsen out to dinner. And here's what the fascists that make up the left in America, this is clip number 7. So this is Kirsten Nielsen. She's out to dinner with a friend. She's dining in a quiet Mexican restaurant. You look at the video of it, and it's low lit. It's designed to be a place where you can have a quiet dinner with friends or family. So that's where Kristen Nielsen is. Now here is what happens as these fascist goons, like the Peter Fondas, like the Antifa, invade this restaurant. And here's what they do.
Mexican dinner as you're deporting and imprisoning tens of thousands of people who come here seeking asylum in the United States. We call on you to end family separation and abolish ICE.
Abolish ICE! Abolish ICE!
Abolish
ICE! Shame! 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 Shame!
Shame! Shame! Shame! Shame! Shame! Shame!
All right, so they're yelling and chanting as they come into this restaurant. This went on for almost 11 minutes, if you can believe it. I don't know what the restaurant management was doing. I mean, long since the police should have been called to control this disturbance. That's what the police are for. I mean, this is trespassing. They're interfering with business. They're harassing customers. Everything wrong with this deal. And they're shouting at Kristen Nielsen at her table, interrupting her dinner, interrupting her privacy, interrupting her private conversations with her friends to yell shame, shame, and all that kind of stuff. So that is that's what's going on. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, I look at this stuff. I mean, it's sobering to me when we look at the tweets that Peter Fonda is sending out. I didn't even read you the worst parts of those tweets. There are parts I couldn't even. There wasn't any way even to sanitize it for Family Radio. And he's talking about the First Lady of the United States and their family. And then you look at what these fascists doing, going into this Mexican restaurant and what they're shouting at Kristen Nielsen. And then you look at these other examples of the hatred. I mean, here are these people going into this restaurant yelling hate and vitriol, poisonous hate, spewing out of their mouths, foaming out of their mouths, directed at Kristen Nielsen, who from all accounts is a fine individual. I don't think Kristen Nielsen's ever hurt anybody in her entire life. She seems like a perfectly appealing individual, perfectly pleasant individual, and has not done anything to deserve this. And you know what it tells me is, you know, I think America is in a really dangerous place right now. I think we are in a lot more danger than anybody realizes, because the bridge, the gap between the hatred that's being spewed in this restaurant, the hatred that's being spewed on these tweets, the hatred that Antifa is spewing and inviting people to carry out acts of violence against immigration, the gap between those tweets and those chants and actual violence against human beings is a very short gap. And it doesn't take much of a spark to prompt somebody to cross that gap and actually start taking out their hate and their vitriol on a human target.
Yeah, and Brian, also just today or yesterday, Wikipedia updated their site. If you search a list of concentration camps and internment camps, you will find now Trump's detention centers listed in that.
Wow. Well, and that's a big deal now, you know, and we're going to talk about this more in the next segment. But one of the reasons, I mean, this internment camp idea, the comparisons to Nazi Germany, comparisons to the Holocaust, is just completely out of control. And the reason for this is the left knows that children are their best tools. They don't care about these children. They are just using these children. They don't have compassion for these children. These children to them are simply useful tools to demonize Donald Trump, to demonize you and me as conservatives who believe in the rule of law, and to distract the American public from the scandal of what the Inspector General's office revealed about the Department of Justice. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is Dr. Richard Lamb, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. As I was rearranging some books in my library the other day, I came across an old book published in 1985, which caused quite a stir when it was first published. The book was Amusing Ourselves to Death by Dr. Neil Postman, professor of communications, arts, and sciences at New York University. Postman's thesis is that television and modern media are conditioning Americans to virtually continuous, mindless entertainment, which will take away our ability to think or even our desire to learn. Reading Postman from the perspective of 2017 is to be tempted to grant him the prophet's mantle. Virtually everything he warned us against in 1985 is now coming to pass. Postman began by contrasting George Orwell's dark vision of a totalitarian future in a police state with Aldous Huxley's vision in Brave New World. Postman predicts it is far more likely that America will fall prey to Huxley's equally chilling vision of the future rather than Orwell's. And I quote, Orwell feared those who would deprive us of information. Huxley feared those who would give us so much that we would be reduced to passivity and egoism. Orwell feared that the truth would be concealed from us. Huxley feared the truth would be drowned in a sea of irrelevance. Orwell feared we would become a captive culture. Huxley feared we would become a trivial culture, preoccupied with some equivalent of the feelies. As Huxley remarked in Brave New World, people would be controlled by inflicting pleasure. In short, Orwell feared what we will hate will ruin us. Huxley feared what we would love would ruin us. End quote. Does that sound familiar? Amusing ourselves to death, preoccupied with electronic entertainment and electronic communication. For more information on how these emerging technologies are transforming our culture in very detrimental ways, go to ses.edu. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
Howdy, welcome back to the third segment of today's program on American Family Radio. Focal Point is the program, and our focal point today is the immigration issue. The activists that disrupted Kirstjen Nielsen's dinner last night at this Mexican restaurant in Washington, D.C., call themselves the Democratic Socialists of America. And this video that was on Facebook, this was their video. They're not ashamed of themselves for what they've done. They're proud of what they've done. They want everybody to know what they've done. And they are, enamored of the fact that this is something, a stunt that they were able to pull off. They were shouting at her end Texas concentration camps, repeatedly yelling shame. As you heard, this went on like for 10 minutes. So that's what's going on with our friends over on the far left. You know, despite all this, despite the beating that Donald Trump has been taking day in and day out, still at this point, 48% of likely U.S. voters approve of President Trump's job performance. 50% disapprove, so he's about even Steven. Better numbers than Barack Obama had at the same time in his administration. I've got another article here from Daily Caller showing you all of the photos of Obama's illegal immigrant detention facilities that the media is not going to show you. We probably ought to get this up on the Focal Point Facebook page as well, because this is pretty telling. If you look at the photos of border detention facilities from the Obama era, they look identical to the ones that are being used in the Trump era. But you'll never see them because the media is going to bury these things in the depths of the deep blue sea. So you look at these pictures, and you've got children in cages, literally, children in cages, the very thing they're beating up on Donald Trump for, and they have these children wrapped in tin foil. I don't know what that was all about, but they are wrapped in tin foil.
It's kind of a Mylar blanket is what it is.
Is that what it is? Was it an actual Mylar blanket?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So that's what they're doing for blankets, some kind of Mylar thing lined on the inside, tin foil on the outside. So anyway, it looks exactly like what you have heard them pillaring the Obama administration for, but of course you never heard anything about that at the time back in 2014 because the media was in the pocket of the Obama administration. They were in the bag for Obama. So these photographs were available, but they were concealed from the view of the public because it didn't fit the narrative of Barack Obama as the light bringer and the all compassionate one and all that kind of stuff. Now let's look at some sound bites that deal with this immigration issue. Give you one example here. Let's start with clip number 3. Now this is Eric Swalwell. He is a congressman from the state of California. And remember, they're talking about this Inspector General's report and all of these texts exchanged between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Is he going to be elected president? No, 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 we'll stop it. So here's the real collusion, by the way, to influence the election. It's the Democrats in the DOJ and the FBI. It's the Democrats that were colluding together to try to interfere with the 2016 election. Wasn't Trump and Russia doing it, colluding together. It was the Democrats colluding together amongst themselves to affect the outcome of the 2016 election. There's your collusion right there, if that's what you are looking for. So here is Eric Swalwell. I mean, they got a responsibility to get the bottom of the Attorney General's report, but they don't care anything about that. We'll play another example or two about this, but here's Eric Swalwell. Remember, the hearing is about the Inspector General's report about the investigation of the Department of Justice into the 2016 campaign and what kind of campaign and electoral skullduggery may have been pulled off and by whom. Here's Eric Swalwell, clip 3.
The only text messages that I really care about right now are the hundreds of people at home and across the country who are asking me, what in the hell is the Judiciary Committee doing right now? I mean, this is maddening. I don't know if my colleagues are checking your voicemails or checking your emails or checking your Twitter feed. People aren't talking about emails. They're not. They're talking about kids separated from their mom and their dad sitting in cages on our southern border. And then they say, hey, Congressman Swalwell, which committee is responsible for that? And I tell them, well, it's the Judiciary Committee. Great, so when you get back to Congress on Tuesday, you guys are immediately going to look at why this is happening, right? No, we're having a hearing, I tell them, but our hearing is on Hillary Clinton's emails.
The gentleman may be pleased to know that on the floor on Thursday, as soon as Thursday, there will be a bill to address the very problem the gentleman is talking about. But it has nothing to do with the importance of making sure that the Federal Bureau of Investigation does not repeat what it did in 2016 and into 2017.
All right, so they're saying there's a bill that's being prepared to deal with this issue. Apparently, President Trump is getting ready to sign an executive order to do something about this. I have no idea how that could even be legal. We didn't like it when President Obama used executive orders to go around Congress and go around the Constitution. But again, what our law enforcement agencies are doing right now is they are actually enforcing the law that was passed by Congress. This is the way it is supposed to work. Congress is the only branch of government that has the authority to enact legislation. The president simply can't enact legislation because he wants to. He may find something that's perfectly horrid and needs attention, but his job then is to bring it to Congress and appeal to Congress to do something about it. He doesn't have the authority to issue executive orders and just impose law. Can't do it. We complained about it when Barack Obama did it. We should complain about it when President Trump does it, and apparently he's getting ready to do that this afternoon. But here's another example of how the Democrats just cannot get their focus off the immigration issue because they want to divert our attention from Hillary and her emails. They want to divert our attention to distract us from the reality that this is a woman who today should be behind bars. She should be in a woman's prison somewhere, separated from her children, by the way, because she committed numerous felonies against the United States. Now, here is Sheila Jackson, our good friend Sheila Jackson Lee, and Jim Jordan is talking about the FISA warrants that were used to surveil American citizens like Donald Trump and members of his campaign. And what the House wants to get at is, where are the documents that were used to justify this FISA warrant? Because what we're hearing, it was the Steele dossier, which even Jim Comey said is salacious and unverified. Is that what you used to get a FISA warrant? Did the judges in the FISA court know that Hillary Clinton had paid for the Steele dossier? Did the judge know that the guy that wrote the thing had been cashiered by the FBI because he was leaking information to the media contrary to policy? Did they know any of that? And, of course, they did not. So they're trying to get to the bottom of this, and here is Representative Jordan starting to talk about the FISA court, and then we hear from our good friend Sheila Jackson Lee.
Will you look at the issue of why, when the dossier was taken to the FISA court, they didn't tell the court who paid for the document? Will you look at that question?
Certainly within the FISA review.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman. Parliamentary
Mr. Horowitz, when you in the course of your investigation, will you look at the question of why, when the application was taken to the FISA court, they didn't reveal the fact that the author of the document, the author of the dossier...
Chairman, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
The gentleman from Ohio controls the time.
That's Trey Gowdy.
Is it not appropriate to raise the question as to what is the germaneness of the gentleman's line of questioning and whether or not we're dealing with the report of Mr. Horowitz or we're dealing with the Republicans' attempt to undermine the Mueller investigation and as well to fire Attorney General Rosenstein, which they're planning to do on Friday.
The gentlelady has not stated a parliamentary inquiry. The gentleman from Ohio controls the time, and I would ask that the time be put back on the clock that was usurped by the gentlelady from Texas.
I would just respond, Mr. Chairman. It's been widely understood that when the dossier was taken to the FISA court to get a secret warrant to spy on a fellow American citizen, they didn't tell the court two important facts. They didn't tell the court who paid for the document. They didn't tell the court the guy who wrote it had been fired by the FBI.
All right, so those are two relevant facts. FISA judges never heard that the Steele dossier was campaign material. It was campaign literature. It was opposition research funded entirely by Hillary Clinton. The judge that decided to issue the FISA warrant didn't know anything about that, and he did not know that the guy who had written the thing was fired by the FBI because he was untrustworthy, was no longer working for the FBI, had been terminated with prejudice by the FBI. They never knew anything about that. Now, here is Elijah Cummings, clip 5. We're not going to have time to run this whole thing. I'll run this on the other side of the break. But this is Elijah Cummings. And again, this is a guy that's in this hearing that's supposed to be about the Mueller investigation, or the investigation, not so much the Mueller investigation, because this investigation wasn't specifically concerned about that, but the investigation into Hillary's emails, investigation into what was going on with the 2016 campaign, and of course the FISA warrant had something to do with that, so that's germane to this investigation. But Elijah Cummings just cannot get his mind off what's going on at the border. So again, I want you to be prepared for this. You're not going to see anything on cable news networks, virtually nothing on cable news networks, about these important hearings on Capitol Hill. 74 congressmen yesterday. I mean, the place was packed out because this is such a momentous investigation. You won't see anything about that on the network news. You won't see anything about it on the cable news. All you're going to see are pictures of crying children. That's all you're going to see. And so, again, we go back to the question, who is at fault? Yes, we hate to see any child in that position. We would do anything to keep that child from being in that position. Whose fault is it that the children are in that position? That is the fault of their parents and no one else. We'll come back with your phone calls on the immigration issue. The number to call is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Love to hear what you think about this immigration showdown, this immigration crisis. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Focal Point American Family Radio.
What Solomon is saying here is, remember, God is in heaven and he sees everything. You are on earth and your vision is very limited. If you could see what God sees, you wouldn't be saying what you're saying. That's what Solomon is teaching us.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series Searching for Heaven on Earth, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
You wish you could stop thinking about it, but you can't. It never quite leaves your thoughts. Even in the joyful moments, it's there. The sadness, shame, and sorrow. You know you can't go on like this, so don't. Phone the International Helpline for Abortion Recovery at 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who's already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
This is Life Issues with Brad Mattis, president of Life Issues Institute.
It's a sad commentary on life in China, where respect for human life is held in poor regard. For decades, the government has forced abortion and sterilization on its people. An elderly and lonely widower has put himself up for adoption. He's estranged from his sons, refuses to go to a nursing home, and is afraid of dying alone. So, in an ad, he explains that he's still strong-bodied, can shop, cook, and take care of himself. My hope is that a kind-hearted person or family will adopt me and bury my body when I'm dead. Traditionally, the elderly were valued and respected, but the one-child policy has transformed the way this nation views human life. Tens of millions of elderly people now struggle with no support. I pray he finds a family.
Follow us on Twitter at Life Issues USA and stay informed, more informed than you've ever been.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Good to have you in the conversation as we talk about what's going on down there on the border. Let's play one more clip. This is Elijah Cummings. This is clip number 5. And Elijah Cummings, of course, was a congressman, and he's in this hearing yesterday. And he's like the ranking member. So he's a Democrat there. So he's just, Trey Gowdy's the chairman. He's the ranking member, so he's second on the committee. He's one guy that's supposed to be responsible to keep things moving forward and keep things on topic. And he just can't help himself either. Here's what Elijah Cummings had to say in this hearing about the 2016 election.
We sent letter after letter after letter, asking these committees to investigate the Trump administration's policy, which is now resulting in child internment camps. That's what I said, child internment camps. But we have gotten no response. Look, even if you believe people entered our country illegally, even if you believe they have no valid asylum claims in their own country, even if you believe immigration should be halted entirely, we all should be able to agree that in the United States of America, we will not intentionally separate children from their parents.
We aren't.
We will not do that.
We aren't.
We are better than that.
We are.
We are so much better.
Yes, we are. It's the parents doing it.
We should be able to agree that we will not keep kids in child internment camps indefinitely and hidden away from public view. And I'm talking directly to my Republican colleagues. We need you to stand up to President Trump.
President.
We need you to join us in telling him that we reject this mean policy.
Passed by
we need
Democrats.
you to tell him to abandon this policy. We need you to remind him that this is the United States of America, and it is a great country. And we need you to stand up for those children.
So again, the main takeaway here is that these Democrats are desperate to change the subject. They know that the IG report is lethal to Democrats, and it's lethal to the entire swamp. So they want to change the subject. They want to shift the topic. They want to shift the focus to children on the border because they think that they can win on that topic because they know that the American people have been so numbed to the truth, numbed to logic, numbed to facts, numbed to reality, and numbed to the truth that they can pull a stunt like this, use children shamelessly as pawns, as things to be used for their political agenda, and they'll be able to get away with it. They might even be able to advance their cause by playing on the gullibility and the naivety of the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, do not let these people lie to you because they will. They'll do it every single day. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Essence in Temple, Texas. Essence, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hello, sir. Permission to come aboard.
Permission granted. Man your battle station, sailor.
Hey, I just want to say real fast that I think President Trump should shut down everything and have all the computers seized right now because I feel like there is evidence of Democratic collusion sitting right under his nose. All that stuff that's going on with the Hillary stuff. And I was going to say fast on immigration, it's got to be an about face. They need to have a busing system and take them right back to the border. None of this nonsense of Americans flipping the bill for these people over here. Maybe Mexico can pay for that busing system. Thank you, sir. I got to get back to work.
All right, appreciate it, Essence. Thank you for the call. And, you know, we are spending a huge sum of money feeding and housing these children, providing food for them, nutrition, providing educational access, providing entertainment access, providing comfortable beds for them to sleep in. We're spending an enormous amount of money doing that. And what Donald Trump, I think, is going to ask Congress to do is pass a law that enables them to keep families together by immediately deporting them together. In other words, pass a law that says if a family is detained at the border and they're determined to be here illegally, you can immediately deport the entire family. That's family unification. You keep the family together. And we believe in that. We believe in keeping families together wherever it is possible. So if they're determined to be here legally or illegally, a judge determines that, the gavel comes down, and the family is returned to their home country immediately. That's a way to get that done. All right, let's go to Francis in Houston, Texas. Francis, welcome. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon. Thank you. I had a question regarding, the mothers and children that are being separated. And I agree with you that the family does need to be kept together and they need to be deported together. But my question is, I know there's a lot of poor people in Mexico that don't have access to computers or technology that can help them fill out the paperwork for immigration. So I guess my question is, does the United States, other than a U.S. embassy, does the United States have facilities to help facilitate proper immigration reform? I think it needs to be included with immigration reform, like to have the proper capabilities to help people apply for citizenship the legal way.
Yeah, well, Francis, we do. We have embassies we have an embassy in Mexico City. We have consulates in different places in Mexico, and they're accessible to the Mexican people. They can go there. They can find somebody that can converse with them in their native language and can help them begin the process. If they want to apply for asylum, they can apply for asylum in a U.S. consulate in Mexico. They want to start the application for citizenship. they can do the same thing. So we have consulates in Mexico. You know, the Mexican government has consulates all over the United States where people that are here from Mexico can go in there and get help with how to navigate our immigration system here in the United States. So we do have resources available to them so they can get a legal start. And if you're going to apply for asylum, that's the way to do it. You know, you go to a consulate, get help, start the paperwork process. And if you're not going to do that, if you come to our border, you will not be separated from your family if you apply for asylum at a port of entry. If you cross the border illegally, that's a crime. And the adults are going to be prosecuted for that. And there's going to be a family separation caused by the criminal behavior of the parent. If you don't want to do that, then come to a port of entry and apply for asylum there, and you will not be separated from your family. Your asylum request will be processed and will be evaluated, and you will not be separated from your family if you do it in the way that's legal. If you try to do it illegally, you're going to be detained, you're going to be prosecuted, and then you're going to be sent back with your family. All right, let's go to William in Gary, Indiana. William, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Thank you, sir, for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
You know, I think we're looking at this whole situation wrong, really. I mean, there's so much anarchy in our society today that nobody is the average person is not looking at it logically. But their pocketbook speaks to their mind. And if they would come out, especially the president, and he says, all right, we spend on an annual basis for these illegal immigrants, if you want to call them that, or illegal aliens, we have to feed them, we have to provide clothing and shelter and all of this. And if we release them out into society, many of them are going on food stamps and they're going on welfare, and they're all of these freebies that they're getting from the government cost money, and it affects the bottom line. And we're already $20 trillion in debt, plus, actually. And we just got the largest tax break in the last, 35 years?
Mm-hmm.
And so if they said, all right, maybe the Democrats have it right. Maybe since our debt is unsustainable at our current rate, maybe we need to raise taxes back up, and if the average person has to pay an extra 15 or 20% in taxes to cover all of this illegal immigration, well, I think there'll be a whole lot of people on the other side that'll jump up and down and scream and say, maybe we need to send these people home.
Yeah, that'd get their attention. It certainly would. You know, and I think Donald Trump does talk about the cost in American dollars. You know, one of the arguments for immigration advocates is that they are a boost to the economy. It's not true. The Heritage Foundation, these numbers are a couple of years old, but I'm sure they haven't changed much, that the average illegal immigrant, when he comes to this country, will contribute about $10,000 to the American economy, but he will consume over $32,000 in welfare benefits. So they cost the United States 3 times more than they contribute. That's something we should not forget. Let's go to Rick in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Rick, welcome. What's on your mind?
I'm talking about, let's go back down memory lane, America, and remember who Mr. Henry Fonda really is.
Talking about the father of Peter Fonda? The father of Peter Fonda?
He is the father of Hanoi Jane Fonda.
That's true.
Hanoi Jane Fonda. I am a disabled veteran of the Vietnam era. I was severely injured in the military, but not in combat. But I do well remember when she went to North Vietnam, one of the most corrupt and communist countries in the world at that time, who used their own children as human bombs.
Well, that's correct, Rick. Well, it's good to remind us of that. Whole family has got kind of a tainted string to it. I think Henry Fonda might have been cut from a different bolt of cloth, but his daughter Jane certainly essentially was a traitor. She aided and abetted our enemy in a time of war. That's treason. And certainly Peter Fonda, not much better. We'll be right back after the news. Andrew in Myrtle Beach, stay with us, and I'll take it first thing.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Announcing 3 new episodes of Ryan DeFrady's Secret Agent. These animated half-hour episodes will entertain children.
That's right!
Ryan DeFrady's is a secret agent with a whole lot to learn, and he insists on working alone until he's paired with a very unlikely partner.
Mommy!
From American Family Studios, episodes 4, 5, and 6 are available now at afastore.net.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The FBI agent caught up in an anti-Trump text controversy is not on the job today. John Decker reports.
FBI counterintelligence agency Peter Strzok was escorted from the FBI building on Friday. Strzok had a central role in the FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server while serving as Secretary of State, and he's now being investigated by the DOJ's Inspector General for private text messages that disparaged President Trump when he was running for the White House. IG Michael Horowitz testified before a House committee yesterday.
We found the implication that senior FBI employees would be willing to take official action to impact a presidential candidate's electoral prospects to be deeply troubling.
President Trump has called Strzok a sick loser. At the White House, John Decker, Fox News.
An evangelical leader believes Christians who push the idea that illegal immigration is biblical are off base. Chad Groening has more.
Russell Moore, who is president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, recently appeared on CNN with Wolf Blitzer to continue to try to justify his pro-illegal alien position by arguing that children should not be separated from the parents. He called Attorney General Jeff Sessions to task for holding to the rule of law.
I think surely, as Americans, we can do better than this when it comes to vulnerable children who need their parents. If we're pro-family, we ought to recognize how important that is.
Sessions has responded to the criticism of Moore and others about separating illegal alien family members.
American citizens that are jailed do not take their children to jail with them. Non-citizens who cross our borders unlawfully between our ports of entry with children are no exception to this principle.
Sam Rohr is an independent Baptist and president of the American Pastors Network. He says it is deplorable that Moore and others try to use Scripture to justify their position.
Many Christian leaders are taking a position that the Bible says open up the borders, bring in anybody. To say no to anyone is a sin, that the Bible's command to invite in the stranger means anybody, including the enemy, and that's totally and patently unbiblical.
I'm Chad Groening.
The release of a pastor from prison in a relatively new country in Africa is helping to call attention to the human rights violations taking place there. Bill Bumpus reports.
According to persecution watchdog groups, hundreds of Christians have been arrested and held for their faith in Eritrea, a country located in the Horn of Africa that gained independence in the early 1990s. It's been learned that a pastor jailed for more than a decade was recently released, but it's being speculated that the reason was primarily due to deteriorating health caused by poor treatment in prison. Nathan Johnson with International Christian Concern says Eritrea is horrible for Christians. The communist regime allows only 4 religions, Eritrean Orthodox, Catholic, Lutheran, and Sunni Islam. But to join, you have to make 4 pledges.
First is that you will never be born again, which is specifically obviously targeting Christians because that's a Christian term. Secondly, your loyalty is to the government, not God, church, family, any of those other things. Your first loyalty is to the government. Third is that you'll never carry a Bible outside of the church or home. And then the last one is that you will turn in any missionaries or evangelists that you do find in the country.
Plus, when you turn them in, you get paid 3 months' wages.
It's a very poor country, so this is a straight attack at Christians.
Johnson says the world must come together to end the abuse of human rights in Eritrea. I'm Bill Bumpus.
A Chicago teen is sentenced today in the killing of another teen over a Facebook feud.
The 18-year-old Chicago teen who's not being named because she was a minor in 2014 when she used her uncle's gun to kill another 14-year-old girl, India Martin, in what began as a Facebook fight over a boy. The defendant pled guilty to first-degree murder and attempted first-degree murder of another girl in a case that also symbolizes how gun violence that plagues parts of the city passes from one generation to another. The girl's uncle sentenced to 100 years in prison in the case. In Chicago, Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com. I'm Rusty Pugh.
American Family Radio presents a State of the Union address featuring well-known Christian leader Dr. James Dobson.
Until we begin to move back to the spiritual and moral understandings with which our founding fathers brought to this wonderful nation a constitution based on biblical understandings, until we return to that, we're going to have a lot of trouble.
Listen this Thursday afternoon, 2:30 Central on American Family Radio.
This is incredible. Trump administration officials have been sending babies and other young children. Oh, hold on. Oh. Just, I think I'm going to have to hand this off. Yeah. Sorry.
The rich and powerful reminding you just how virtuous they are.
We will not keep kids in child internment camps.
You think any of these people really care about family separation?
Nursing infants being ripped away from their mothers.
It's not just illegal immigrants who are separated from their children.
They aren't coming back.
This is one of those moments that tells you everything about our ruling class. They care far more about foreigners than about their own people.
Children incarcerated in warehouses.
No matter what they tell you, this is not about helping children.
Every human being with a sense of compassion and decency should be outraged.
There's no cost to them. The cost is entirely on you.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy and welcome back to the second hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Don't forget, you can catch us live streaming on Facebook. Right now, you can go to our Focal Point with Brian Fisher Facebook page and live stream us. You can live stream us on YouTube. We have a YouTube account. Go there, subscribe to it, and you can watch us live streaming on YouTube. And also on both the Facebook page, we record the program as we live stream it. The same thing on YouTube. We record it as it's being broadcast, and then we upload it to our YouTube account, upload it to the Facebook page, so you can catch it after the program is over. If you happen to miss the program during the day, on the Facebook page, we publish it with an extensive table of contents so you can find your way around the content of the program. Also, we have 184 stations that carry our signal live. You may live in one of the communities that carry one of those stations. You can audio stream us on your computer every day at afr.net. We have podcasts up at the afr.net page you can get to very easily. And again, you can catch them on the Facebook page and the YouTube channel even after the program is over.
And also, Brian, we're carried on the Christian Television Network, which kind of caught me by surprise. Yesterday, I was talking to my mother who lives in Las Vegas. My sister was going through the channel and heard my voice and looked, and there was our program. I didn't even know we were on in Las Vegas. I would have told them a long time ago. Yeah, so we're all over the place.
Yeah, and we're on a whole bunch of these community television networks, and so that's another way to catch the content of the program if you happen to live in one of those communities. Now, I don't think, Jeff, I got a question about the, I don't think.
It looks like an X. Let me see if
I don't think I can bring. We're trying to get a caller on the line. So, Andrew, hang on just a second. We got a little bit of technical issue to solve first, and we'll bring you on just as soon as we can. So, hang tight. Don't go anywhere. We'll see if we can get you on air here. I've been fooling around a little bit.
See if you can hear him.
All right. Let's try. Andrew, are you with me? No, I do not have Andrew.
It says he's on.
Okay, Andrew, can you hear me? No, I guess not.
There he is.
All right, there we go. Got him now. All right, Andrew, are you with me?
I am still here, Brian. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Thank you for holding while we solve that technical problem. Didn't want to miss your call. Go ahead, Andrew, and tell us what's on your mind. Thanks for holding, by the way.
Well, you're quite welcome. First of all, I work in the technical field, so technology is great when it works.
Yeah. Well, it's like they say, you know, to err is human, but to really foul things up takes a computer. Yeah. So. All right, go ahead, Andrew.
All right. Well, first of all, again, I want to thank you for your show and a voice of reason in our country with all of the unreasonable left continuing their garbage spill into our minds, because the majority of us are protected by God. We know that. We've got discernment. It's interesting that the IG report that's now being reviewed in the judiciary, the obviously in Congress, that all of a sudden now there's another story that's trying to take the headlines away from, as you say, a very, very dangerous report to the Democrats. And the only thing they can do is try and spin off something and literally using the kids as this storyline, to me, just goes to show the hypocrisy. The fact that they're willing to say we're un-American if we believe that kids should be removed from their parents. And I agree with what you stated earlier. It's the parents' fault. It's not the kids, and it's not ours. But the one thing that's even more interesting is the hypocrisy of the left. I'm going to take this to a whole new level for what they need to be held accountable for. How about all of the abortions that they're still funding of the kids that are being ripped out of the mothers to this day? Now, if they really want to care about kids, let's start right there and stop that from happening. And the other piece I wanted to share real quick is we have about 12 to 13 million kids that are under the poverty level in our country. These are American citizens, and the illegal that are coming across the border are getting better fed, better care than our American citizen kids. Now, if that isn't hypocritical, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
With that, I'll drop off. Thanks very much for taking my call, sir.
Okay, Andrew, appreciate the call, and that's an excellent call from Andrew, and I agree with the major points that he was making there. You know, and his point about the hypocrisy of the left, it really is a staggering level of hypocrisy when you think about it, because here they are complaining vociferously, loudly. They're saying this is obscene, it's grotesque, this is un-American to rip children out of the arms of their mothers. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what is more grotesque than that is ripping children out of the wombs of their mothers. And the left is blissfully unconcerned about that. That's blood being shed, innocent blood being shed every day. Remember, Isaiah said in Isaiah 1, we read it today, that when we lift our hands in prayer, all God sees is the blood of the innocents that cover our hands. So until we come to grips with that as a nation, we are still under God's pending judgment. All right, Andrew, great call. I appreciate that very much. You know, and this is a point I made earlier. Andrew's reminding us of something I said earlier. You look at the way these children are being taken care of. You know, I told you yesterday about what they have. They have beds. I've seen pictures of the beds they sleep in. They got mattresses and all that kind of stuff. And they get an education center. They have a gym. They've got a rec center. They've got all of the basketball courts that are available to them. And so, again, these kids are being better taken care of in a lot of ways than the poor in American communities. So I don't want to hear any of this stuff about the inhumane treatment of children on the border. And again, you know, if you're an adult in America and you break the law, you are going to get taken to jail or to prison, and you are not going to be allowed to bring your child in there with you. Why? Because we, as a compassionate nation, we do not want to put young, vulnerable children in a prison environment populated by adults, especially if you've got adult males in there. The last place you want any young child, male or female, is in a prison setting with adult male prisoners. You talk about something that's inhumane, something that's inexcusable, that would be the very definition of that. We don't do that in America because we don't want to put, you know, if we started doing that, we started throwing children in the cells with their parents, I mean, you can't believe the hue and cry that we would hear over that, and it would be entirely justified. We just don't do it that way. So they're getting better treatment in a lot of ways than the young in many parts of America. So we don't need to hear any complaints about the immorality of what is taking place in the treatment of these kids.
Let me ask you, you might even be able to make the case that any adult or parent that forced their children on a march across the desert, putting themselves at risk to a lot of dangers, thirst and attacks and all that, just to go break some other country's law, wouldn't that be a form of child abuse?
Sure.
I mean,
yeah, and you think about
if an American parent did that, we'd probably be taking the child away.
Yeah, and a lot of these kids are sent on this trek by their parents. I mean, they show up as unaccompanied minors.
Yeah.
Their parents have put them on a train or handed them over to a smuggler, paid them X number of dollars to take them across the desert. I mean, that'd be child abuse. If a parent did that in America, you could not get away with that. You know, if you handed your kid off to a stranger, that'd be kidnapping, and you would be put up on a charge of child abuse. Back in 2.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
The American Medical Association wants physician training to lessen the negative impact of electronic health records on the patient-doctor relationship. That's a valid concern. But it also wants doctors trained in clinical documentation so they're better equipped to meet the changing expectations of government and society. That's the wrong focus. Physicians should be equipped to meet their ethical and professional obligations to patients, like the doctors at jointhewedge.com. In a few weeks, my groundbreaking book on the dangers of the electronic health record to privacy, safety, health, and liberty will be on sale. If you want to be notified, go to bigbrotherintheexamroom.com. That's bigbrotherintheexamroom.com.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
The American Family Association invites you to a very special gathering of AFA friends from across America this fall at the Big Cedar Lodge in the Ozarks. The AFA retreat will be a relaxing time of fellowship and inspiration. Speakers include Sandy Rios, Dr. Ray Pritchard, Todd Starnes, Abraham Hamilton III, and Ed Vitagliano, and Dennis Jernigan will lead us in worship. Experience all of this in a beautiful setting that dates back to the 1920s, built originally to be a wilderness retreat for a prominent Missouri family. We hope you'll join us October 8th through the 11th at the rustic Big Cedar Lodge just south of Branson on Table Rock Lake. It promises to be a refreshing time of worship, teaching, fellowship, and fun. To register or for more information, visit afafoundation.net. Seating is limited, so register today. Hope to see you there.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. You know, we were talking earlier in the program about the fact that there are consulates, U.S. consulates in Mexico. And Jeff did a little bit of poking around on the break to see see exactly what the state of affairs is. And Jeff, tell us what you found.
Yeah, it's actually on usembassy.gov. I mean, people can look it up for themselves. We have 9 U.S. consulates in Mexico that can assist people with seeking asylum. And they even give the phone number, a map to the places. Families are guaranteed not to be separated. So this is the safest and the legal way of seeking asylum. Again, you know, it's all right there if you want to go look it up for yourself. It's usembassy.gov.
So 9 of them, and I think one of them, Ciudad Juarez, which is a border city.
Yeah. There's one in Tijuana.
One in Tijuana, which is another border city. And again, it's the safest way to seek asylum. You will not be separated from your children. So again, these families, if they are interested in legal asylum, they can go to one of these consulates in Mexico. They will not be separated from their children, and they can start the process right there, absolutely safe. They will be protected, and their children will not be separated from them even for a moment.
Wow.
All right.
Wow, that changes a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does, doesn't it? Now, got another story here about an immigration raid in the United States, Toledo, Ohio. More than 100 workers were arrested yesterday at an Ohio meatpacking plant by federal agents. Second large-scale raid within the state in the past 2 weeks. The investigation focused on whether the company knowingly hired people who are in the country illegally. Now, so this is good news because this means that the Trump administration is starting to crack down on employers that do not use E-Verify. Employers have a responsibility to verify that the people they hire are in the country legally and are therefore eligible to hold down a job in America. And their status can be verified virtually instantly using E-Verify. It's a federal database of all the Social Security numbers in the state and who owns them, who's attached to them. And they're finding that here are these meatpacking plants. This is one of the major places you are going to find illegal aliens, is in meatpacking plants. That's one of the places that they will go to find jobs. And the business owners that run these meatpacking plants, I'm not talking about every one. I want to be very sure about that. I'm not talking about every meatpacking plant in the country, but a lot of these business owners run these meatpacking plants. You know, it's hard work and there's a lot of blood and stuff. I've worked in a meatpacking plant myself, and it's not a pleasant environment to work in. But these owners of these meatpacking plants, they can pay these illegal aliens below union scale, below minimum wage, and so they can get a leg up on their competitors because it costs them less money to get meat ready for market than their competitors. Why? Because they're hiring illegal aliens. This should not be. You know, and I've worked in a meatpacking plant before. This is not a job that Americans will not do. So when you hear that myth about these jobs out there that Americans won't do, working in a meatpacking plant ain't one of those. Good money there, and there, because remember when Alabama passed legislation that required that every time somebody came in contact with the government or the government agency, they had to be vetted to, their immigration status had to be checked. And when families heard about that, they fled the state of Alabama in droves. Classrooms emptied out. There was a meatpacking plant in one city in Alabama, and it was virtually deserted on Monday. The law went into effect like on Friday. On Monday, you couldn't hardly find an illegal alien worker in that meatpacking plant when the whole thing had been staffed by them during the prior week. And when they announced that they had job openings, the meatpacking plant had people lined up literally around the block, Americans looking for good-paying jobs. So that wasn't a job that Americans won't do. Clearly jobs that were being taken by illegal aliens from American workers. All right, let's finish up some immigration clips. I want to cycle back to the IG's investigation, those hearings and so forth. Let's listen to Hillary Clinton, clip number 6. Here's Hillary talking about immigration.
Meanwhile, what's happening to families at the border is horrific. Nursing infants being ripped away from their mothers, parents being told their toddlers are being taken to bathe or play, only to realize hours later they aren't coming back. Children incarcerated in warehouses and, according to one account, kept in cages. This is a moral and humanitarian crisis. Every one of us who's ever been a parent or a grandparent, an aunt, a big sister, any one of us who's ever held a child in our arms, every human being with a sense of compassion and decency should be outraged. This is not happening because of the, quote, Democrats' law, as the White House has claimed. Separating families is not mandated by law at all. That is an outright lie.
Well, that is an outright lie. What you just heard Hillary Clinton say is an outright lie, because there's no place in the American legal system, no place in the American legal system where if you commit a crime, remember, crossing the border once illegally is a misdemeanor, crossing the border twice is a felony, and the difference between a misdemeanor is you can usually take care of that with a fine. Felony, you usually have to spend time behind bars. So you commit a felony, so you cross the border twice illegally, that is a felony. And what we do is we take adults into custody. That's what you do when people break the law. And that involves an involuntary separation of parents from the child. So what Hillary Clinton is talking about here, that is the outright lie, that never happens in the American judicial system. And Hillary's playing on our guilt, on white guilt here in particular, moaning about children being ripped from the arms of their mothers, nursing infants being ripped from the arms of their mothers. Well, again, like we talked about in the last segment, what about children, infants that are being ripped from the wombs of their mothers? Where's the compassion on Hillary Clinton's part for those children? Let's drop down to clip number 17, Rob. We didn't get to this the other day. This is Hillary Clinton. And again, she's going to get all pious and sanctimonious on here and start talking about the Bible. Let's listen.
Nor these policies rooted in religion. In fact, those who selectively use the Bible to justify this cruelty are ignoring a central tenet of Christianity. I went to a lot of years of Sunday school. I even taught it from time to time. I've studied the Bible, both the Old and the New Testament. And what is being done using the name of religion is contrary to everything I was ever taught. Jesus said, "Suffer the little children unto me." He did not say, "Let the children suffer."
Well, and of course, what Hillary's omitting there is you can't suffer the little children to come to Christ unless they have been born. If they haven't been born, they're not going to have the opportunity to come to Jesus. That's the part that Hillary omits. In fact, she condemns those who selectively use the Bible to justify this cruelty and say they are ignoring a central tenet of Christianity. Well, this is exactly what people like her who try to find religious support for abortion do. They selectively use the Bible to justify cruelty. All right, let's go to clip number 8. This is our good friend Wolf Blitzer interviewing Tom Homan, who is the director of ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. And here is Wolf Blitzer engaging in an exchange with Mr. Homan. Let's listen.
From your perspective, and I know you've got a distinguished career in law enforcement, we're grateful for all the important work that you did, but is this new zero-tolerance policy that the president has supported, that the Attorney General announced, is it humane?
I think, I think it's the law. As a law enforcement,
it may be the law,
look,
it's the policy, but is it humane?
I think it's the law, and I'm a law enforcement, I must follow the law. I think we take good care of these children. I think what's inhumane is parents that choose to put their kids in the hands of a smuggling organization, a criminal smuggling organization, have their kids smuggled in this country. That's inhumane. The parents of these illegal alien children, they need to make better decisions. Like I hope I'm making the right decisions for my children, they need to do the same. Don't put your kids in the arms of smuggling organizations. Don't put your kids through this treacherous journey. Don't make your kids cross that river. Make your kids walk into the port of entry with you, where there's air conditioning, there's people there to greet you, there's people that will hear your case. Don't break the law and go around, because the fine men and women on the border, these are American heroes that strap a gun to their hip every day and defend that line. While they're dealing with this migration, there's drugs, there's guns, and there's bad people who want to enter this country to do what's wrong. If you want to come to this country, do it the right way. Go to a port of entry. This is a choice clearly made by the parents. Our job is to enforce law. We don't get to pick and choose what we do. We enforce law. Every law enforcement officer, I've been doing this 34 years. I've seen a lot of terrible things in my career. Every police officer sees sad things, but he still got to do his job.
Still got to do his job. He says, the parents are making a choice here. They're choosing to put their children at risk. And this is a good point he makes. What's really inhumane is parents trying to smuggle their kids into the United States with all of the dangers that are involved in that effort, from drug cartels to human smugglers and their absolute indifference to human life, even sex traffickers who would kidnap unaccompanied children to put them into the slave trade. So good for Thomas Homan. That's a good defense of their policy. Now, let's play clip number 9. This is Tucker Carlson. We just squeeze this in. Tucker Carlson talking about the rich and their bogus care for people.
The rich and powerful reminding you just how virtuous they are. You think any of these people really care about family separation? If they did, they'd be worried about the collapse of the American family, which is measurable and real, but they're not worried about that. In fact, they welcome that collapse because strong families are an impediment to their political power. And that's why they're always lecturing you about the patriarchy and the evil of the nuclear family. Millions and millions of American kids are growing up with one parent at home, families separated thanks to their policies, and that's fine with them. Many of those kids, by the way, have a parent behind bars. It's not just illegal immigrants who are separated from their children. The majority of American citizens in prison have minor kids they've left behind. Their families have been separated by force by our justice system because they committed a crime. So in that way, these kids are just like the kids you've been watching on television today. The difference, of course, is they're Americans, so nobody is spending $35,000 a year apiece to make sure they're okay. Democratic politicians and cable news anchors don't visit their foster homes to highlight their plight. They're ignored. This is one of those moments that tells you everything about our ruling class. They care far more about foreigners than about their own people.
And they don't even really care about foreigners. They only care about children because they can use them as pawns to serve their political agenda. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. We'll be right back with more. Stay with us.
Dan Celia of Financial Issues.
I think income ultimately is the most important thing that we protect. I know one thing, and I know this from sitting across a lot of tables from a lot of people over the years, that at some point in time, maybe it's 75, maybe it's 85, there will be a point in time where the only thing you care about is how much income you have coming in. Don't let your portfolio be 100% subject to the volatility in the markets or dependent upon the market. Shore up some permanent income, along with Social Security and your maybe a pension. Have some charitable gift annuity to shore that up. I hope you'll call the AFA Foundation today and find out more detail about a charitable gift annuity.
Call and speak with a representative of the AFA Foundation at 800-326-4543, extension 345.
Here on American Family Radio, this is David Wolin with Haven Ministries, inviting you to anchor your day in God's Word. Have you ever had a check bounce or a credit card decline? Sometimes it's not our fault, but sometimes it is. We forget our resources are limited, and when we reach the end of them, that's it. There's no more until payday. But God isn't like that. In Psalm 50, he says, "Every animal of the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills, for the world is mine, and all that is in it." God's resources are limitless and life-giving. In fact, he is life, and he can give that life to anyone he chooses, and he does that through Jesus, a gift worth more than any check anyone could ever write. Anchor Devotional can help you spend time with him daily. You can get it in print every month. Just visit getanchor.com.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Listening to Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. Glad to have you in the conversation. A couple of more sound bites on the immigration issue. Let's grab clip number 10. This is Tucker Carlson, again, talking about the left and how they're handling this whole immigration issue.
They don't care. Because no matter what they tell you, this is not about helping children. A lot of people yelling at you on TV don't even have children, so don't for a second let them take the moral high ground. Their goal is to change your country forever, and they're succeeding, by the way. Since 2014, to name one example among many, at least 500,000 Central Americans who came here illegally have been released back inside our borders. Did anyone vote for that? And more to the point, who's going to pay for that? Not the people you've been watching on television today. Their kids go to private school if they have them. Their neighborhoods look exactly like they did in 1960. No demographic change at all, just like they like it. There's no cost to them. The cost is entirely on you. But don't complain or else they will call you Hitler.
All right, here is Donald Trump yesterday talking to the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the NFIB, the main small business organization in the country, and he got onto the topic of immigration because it's such a hot topic. Let's listen.
Keep in mind, those who apply for asylum legally at ports of entry are not prosecuted. The fake news media back there doesn't talk about that. They're fake. They are helping these smugglers and these traffickers like nobody would believe. They know it. They know exactly what they're doing, and it should be stopped because what's going on is very unfair to the people of our country, and they violate the law. People that come in violate the law. They endanger their children in the process, and frankly, they endanger all of our children. You see what happens with MS-13, where your sons and daughters are attacked violently? Kids that never even heard of such a thing are being attacked violently, not with guns, but with knives, because it's much more painful. Inconceivable. Here we are talking about business. Inconceivable that we even have to talk about MS-13 and other gangs. They attack violently, the most painful way possible. And a bullet is too quick. And we're allowing these people into our country? Not with me. We're taking them out by the thousands. We're taking them out by the thousands. So what I'm asking Congress to do is to give us a third option, which we have been requesting since last year, the legal authority to detain and promptly remove families together as a unit. We have to be able to do this. This is the only solution to the border crisis. We have to stop child smuggling. This is the way to do it.
All right, so that's Donald Trump yesterday, and he says, look, you've really only got two options when illegals show up at our border. There's only two options. You can either arrest the adults for the crime of trespass, illegal entry, or you just release all the illegal immigrant families into the country. What other option is there? If you're going to arrest the adults and prosecute them for breaking our laws, which you must do or it's just going to be open season, then you're going to have to separate parents from children for the sake of the children. That's not an anti-child move. That is very much a pro-child move. Now, Donald Trump apparently today signed an executive order to try to keep children together with their parents so they're not separated, even while they go through the process of being prosecuted for breaking our immigration laws. I do not know how that's going to work. I'm expecting that before long we're going to hear a hue and cry from people on the left that we're putting children now in these very dangerous environments. Look, they're in there with child smugglers. They're in there with child traffickers. They're in there with sex traffickers. How can a humane government do this to these children? So anyway, that's what I'm expecting is going to wind up happening. All right, now we got a couple of sound bites I want to push in before we're done on the hearing in D.C. yesterday. Here's Trey Gowdy. Let's go back to Cleep. It's like Elijah Cummings calling him President Clump. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
So let's. This is Trey Gowdy, Congressman Gowdy, talking with Michael Horowitz yesterday, and here is a question that he had for him. Clip 1.
Well, given the fact that you and I agree that actually talking to the witness, the suspect, the target might be, absent a contemporaneous recording, some of the better evidence on knowledge and intent, how in the was Jim Comey able to draft an exoneration press release 6 weeks before that interview took place?
I think it's clear from looking at what we uncovered that by that point in time, they had largely concluded what they had concluded.
But my question is, if what you're missing was knowledge and or intent, and the single best repository for that evidence is the person you've yet to talk to, how in the can you make that conclusion? It's my last question I'll have for you. Back when you did trial work, do you remember the judge ever admonishing the jury that you are not to make up your mind until the last witness has testified and the last piece of evidence has been introduced. Do you remember a jury ever being told that by a judge?
Not only do I remember that as a prosecutor, but I actually served on a jury last year. So I remember that from the judge's instruction.
It's kind of one of the basic precepts of our justice system is that you wait until it's over before you draw a conclusion. And I am just dumbfounded that Director Comey would draft a press release and cite the missing element when the single best repository of potential evidence on that element had yet to be talked to. I find that stunning.
Especially for the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of what? Investigation. You know, Gowdy's saying, look, you've given this woman a pass on intent. The law makes no mention whatsoever that you have to intentionally do this to be in violation. And she had all kinds of evidence that she intentionally did what she did. It's not even a question. You know, and Hillary knew the fact that she didn't, to try to make the case that she didn't know what she was doing is absurd. She herself, as Secretary of the State, she banned State Department employees from using private email for official business. Why? For security concerns. She fired an ambassador because he used private email for government business. She herself acknowledged that she had received a security indoctrination concerning the nature and protection of classified information. And in her memoir, she talks about the training that she received about protecting intelligence from espionage, which included when you were on a trip, you needed to leave your communications devices on the plane with the batteries removed, as well as the need. She wrote about this. You got to use an opaque tent or a blanket over your head when she was reading sensitive material. So Hillary Clinton, they taught me it's so sensitive to protect this information. If you're reading this on a trip, you got to put a bag over your head. You got to put a blanket over your head so nobody can read over your shoulder. So for Hillary to say that she didn't have any intent to conceal this is just absolutely absurd. The statute does not require intent. All right, let's go to clip number 2. This is Congressman Jim Jordan talking with the Inspector General Horowitz.
And it just happened to be the most explosive one, the one that says we'll stop Trump. How come we didn't see that beforehand?
Let me explain how we ended up finding that, because I think it's important to also appreciate the.
I guess I'm more interested in if someone was trying to hide it.
Well, we uncovered it in May, so last month. We uncovered it in our 4th round of work on their on their FBI devices.
That's my question. If you uncovered it a month ago, why did we not see it until last Thursday?
I can't answer that question. We provided the
but who
materials
made
to
the
department.
decision? Was it Mr. Wray? Was it Mr. Rosenstein? Was it Mr. Sessions? Who made the decision?
What we have done as we found these texts is send them to the department and for them to produce it to Congress, and that's what we did in May.
And who at the department, though?
We sent it to the Office of Deputy Attorney General and.
So Mr. Rosenstein.
In his office.
Mr. Rosenstein made a decision that instead of us seeing the most explosive text message between these 2 key agents who were on the Clinton team, the Russia team, and on the special counsel team, he made a decision to wait a month for us to see that text message.
I can't speak to whether anyone made a conscious decision.
Man. So, you know, people trying to make Michael Horowitz out to be an independent shooter, straight shooter, just after the facts. I mean, he knows exactly where this email got sent, to whom, who made the decision to forward it on to whoever, and Jim Jordan has to, like, drag it out of him. It's like he's got to put him up against the wall and hold a gun to his head to get him to admit that Rod Rosenstein is the one that received this explosive text. We're going to stop it, and sat on that thing for a month. So what that tells me is Rosenstein needs to go, ladies and gentlemen. This Rosenstein needs to go. He needs to be impeached. I think he needs to be fired. I mean, President Trump can fire him. He can fire Rod Rosenstein. He can do that. He's got the authority to do that, and then get a Deputy Attorney General in place who will do whatever else needs to be done. There's nothing that can stop Donald Trump from firing this guy. He has every reason now to do it, and all the evidence that he needs to say that that is the right thing for him to do. All right, just a couple other items on the immigration issue before we get to the break and your phone calls. You know, one of the issues with illegal immigration is that increasingly, this is the article in the Daily Caller, illegal immigrants are increasingly posing with children who are not their own children in order to try to gain entry into the United States. This is from multiple sources, according to the Daily Caller. Officers are increasingly encountering, quote, family units, quote, of adult males with children of various ages. When law enforcement attempts to debrief the adult males with the children, they often cannot answer even the most basic questions about their children. The children also rarely appear to know details of their apparent fathers. So you got fraud on a major scale taking place on the border. So the Border Patrol saying, look, there's a lot of these parent-child units that come to the border. They're not related at all in any way. Back with your call. Stay with us.
Exposing Washington with Walker Wildman.
So who is responsible for the dysfunction in Washington? That's what we're going to be discussing today.
We have become one of the most litigious societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
Who is God? What is He like? How can we know? Your answer to these questions will impact your worship, discipleship, apologetics, and evangelism. Learn from Ravi Zacharias, Josh McDowell, Chip Ingram, and more than 60 other speakers at Southern Evangelical Seminary's 25th Annual National Conference on Christian Apologetics. It's October 12th and 13th in Charlotte, North Carolina. Get the early bird discount when you register by August 1st at ses.edu.
Hi, I'm Will Addison.
And I'm Miki.
From Airing the Addisons on Urban Family Talk.
We'd like to invite you to the Marriage, Family, and Life Conference coming up August 17th and 18th.
The list of speakers is amazing. We'll have Ryan Baumberger of the Radiance Foundation, Dr. Clarence Schuler of Building Lasting Relationships, Abraham Hamilton III, Pastor Bert Harper and his wife Jan, Stacy Washington, Lonnie Poindexter, Pastor Dexter Sanders, and we'll be there too.
There's a direct attack by the enemy on marriage and family, and babies in the womb are treated like political footballs instead of life. We want to encourage and equip the body of Christ to fight for the restoration of the family. If we can get our families on track, a lot of society's problems could be solved. The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference is from Urban Family Communications, a division of the American Family Association. You can learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Focal Point, Brian Fisher.
Welcome back to Focal Point. Number to call to join our conversation is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Have you weigh in on the hearings into the Mueller report on the immigration crisis at the border. Glad to hear your calls, 888-589-8840. And, one of the things that we need to keep in mind, you've got a lot of these children that are showing up at the border connected to an adult who is not their parent. And when law enforcement, they have to poke into that if they're going to claim some kind of family status. And these people that are pretending to be the dads don't know anything about the child who's supposed to be their child. Don't know anything about what they like. Don't know anything what they like for breakfast. Don't know anything about how much education they've gotten. Don't have any information about what kind of sports they like. They don't know anything. That's not the child's parent. It's evident, and the child doesn't know anything more about the adult. So what does that mean? That means that these children have already been separated from their parents for months before they even got to the southern border. It's the children's own parents that are separating them from their family of origin. We must not forget that. I also have a story here, and it quotes a Sister Norma Pimentel. She works at the Sacred Heart Shelter in the border city of McAllen, Texas. So this is a sister. This is a Catholic sister. This is a nun. You can expect her to tell the truth, especially when it doesn't make the cause of illegal immigration look good. And she said this, one thing we have seen a lot of are people coming with children who are not theirs. Sister Norma Pimentel. This is not a Border Patrol guy. This is a Catholic nun that works at the Sacred Heart Shelter. So she's saying we've seen a lot of this, not just a little bit of it, but a lot of people coming with children who are not there. So a whole lot of fraud taking place down at the southern border. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's begin with Lee in the city of Texas. Welcome, Lee. What's on your mind?
Yes, Brian, I'd like to say just in the book of Titus, it says that we are to maintain good works and to meet the urgent need. And there is an urgent need there at the border. I just wanted to let you know that I'm a volunteer for the Texas Department of Correction. I'm allowed to go into the prisons and everything. And the volunteers in Texas, there's over 25,000 volunteers. And I'm like more proactive of how can we be assistance to the detention system, to the Border Patrols, to Homeland Security, and volunteering our services to help them.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that Governor Abbott would have to be involved in okaying it.
Mm-hmm.
See, we're not allowed to cross over to the federal side of it, at least not now, unless there's some way to maneuver it through legislation for us to be able to volunteer. But I believe that we need to go proactive into how we as Christians can be helpful in a time as this, as children are being separated from the parents. Of course, we can go in and let us be a father to that child. The women that are volunteer, let them be a mother to the child, or brothers or sisters to that child, as the Word of God states. And so we need to go in that direction. When I go into websites and I look to what's going on, everything that comes out to assistance seems to be against trying to help or to be a loving person toward the people that are coming in and explaining and sharing with them.
All right, Lee. Well, listen, I appreciate the call very much. You know, on the larger issue of the immigration issue, one of the things I felt for some time is one of the things that we ought to do is to get churches involved. If you've got a refugee family that's coming from a place like Iran or a place like Iraq where they have a legitimate fear, or Syria, a legitimate fear for their lives, they're a Christian family, let's see if we can get churches in the United States involved in sponsoring them. They can bring them over and promise to take care of that family so they're not a burden on the taxpayers, not a burden on the federal government. The church commits itself to take care of that family. You know, it used to be that if you were going to come into this country as an immigrant, you had to have an American who would sponsor you, who would vouch for you, and would essentially pledge that they would make sure that any financial need that was connected to the immigration, that would be satisfied by the American who was the sponsor. I think we need to get back to that. It'd be a great way to get the church involved and being a part of the solution to the immigration problem. Let's go to Leah in South Haven, Mississippi. Leah, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks. Hey. Everything that's going on, you know, it's easy for us to, you know, not become worried and, you know, just get anxious. Now, I do get worked up about it because it's very frustrating, because you see how these people just don't, you know, they're illogical. And my mom always told me, you can't reason with an unreasonable person. And that's just what all of this brings to mind. You know, what can we do? Of course, we need to be praying, obviously. You know, even if we just get together with, you know, a couple of friends or whatever, and just have that time to pray for these situations, because, you know, the people who are believing all this media, you know, stuff they're just blowing up. For an example, I have an acquaintance on Facebook, and she just posted a vague post about, I'm tired of seeing, you know, these kids ripped away from their parents, and, you know, as a when I lost my mom and, you know, relating to that on her emotions, and someone commented, you know, well, where was the outrage when Obama was president? And she says, look, I don't follow politics. I didn't vote. I don't really know what's, you know, pretty much she doesn't know what's going on, and she's commenting. And
yeah,
it's hard to, you know, not become discouraged when you're thinking, these are the people, you know, they're targeting these people who really don't have a clue. Anyway, I say all that to say it reminds me of course, the whole chapter, 2 Corinthians, but 4:4, it says the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers. So it's nothing new, you know, but it's so frustrating. So.
Yeah, and we've been dealing with it since at least the 1st century and before that. So you're right, Leah. You know, it's a battle we're in, and it sometimes can get discouraging because it seems like the other side is winning. But what you're talking about with this individual, you see how effective the media can be with people who really are not informed and pay very little attention. They see these images. The images are very moving. They're very powerful. And the talking snake media know that they can lie to the American people simply by using the picture of a crying child. And this person evidently has drunk at the trough of the lies of the talking snake media. Let's go to Jerry, Brandon, Mississippi. Jerry, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, how are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I just think that you and maybe Sandy Rios and a few of you around there need to give us a like a flow chart of all these people in politics trying to keep everybody straight, their names like Moeller and all that. We need flow charts.
Yeah, we need rosters, don't we? Can't tell the players without a program. We're kind of at that stage, aren't we?
Yeah, it'd be great to have a poster on the wall with, you know, who all's done what. That would be great.
All right, Gerald, we'll take that under advisement.
Thank
That's
you.
actually a very good idea. Let people know who the good guys are and the bad guys are and keep track of them in some way. Let's go to Tim in Newton, Kansas. Tim, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hi, Brian. I'd just like to throw out an idea that I have not heard you or anybody on today's issues or otherwise talk about. We're also frustrated with Jeff Sessions not stepping in and doing something, you know, taking control. Is it possible that Jeff Sessions has seen this whole thing imploding on Rosenstein and everybody else and Comey? Is it possible that with him just taking a hands-off approach that there's going to be more people either prosecuted or take the fall? If he steps in and just fires people, that would just be the end of it, right?
Well, you know, I don't know about that. I do know that Sessions has done a good job of pushing the need to secure the border, push criminal prosecutions for those that come across the border illegally. He's been on top of all of that. I know Donald Trump is committed to doing that, not let up on the pedal at all to prosecute. I mean, the no exceptions policy, the decision to prosecute everybody that comes across the border illegally, that's from Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions down to the Department of Homeland Security. So they're a part of that. So they're doing a good job on the issue of controlling the border. And, you know, Sessions has been doing a good job of that. But, I mean, he does need to step up on some of these other issues. He's got to cashier Rod Rosenstein. If he doesn't, the House is probably going to impeach the guy and seek to remove him from office. One other point, we talked to you about what the left is going to do. Already, the ink isn't even dry on this executive order, and the ACLU has come out with a tweet that Trump is putting one crisis on top of another. Children should never be incarcerated. Children should never be incarcerated. That's the ACLU. Well, that's what was happening, Mr. ACLU. They weren't being incarcerated. They were being kept in these places where they had gyms and they had basketball places to work out and all that kind of stuff. All right, let us grab a call from Mike in Columbus, Ohio. Thanks, Tim, for the call. Mike, go ahead. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, first time call. Love your show.
Thank you.
The Democrats have found a major issue to distract, divide, and conquer. And I really think that they really don't care about children at all. We all know that. It's just an issue to really distract from the IG report. That's a majorly embarrassing issue for the Democrats right now. They needed something to distract the American people and even the world from this issue. So This is just an attempt to distract and divide and conquer.
All right, Mike, I agree with you 100%. Mike is exactly right about that. Florence, I'm sorry, ran out of time to take your call, but Mike is correct. This whole thing is just a dog and pony show to try to keep the attention of the American people off of what's happening with the Inspector General's report. Well, that's it for today. Do not forget, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes it can long, but we are fighting a winnable war. See you tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Vice President Mike Pence called the Values Voter Summit the greatest gathering of conservative, pro-family Americans in the nation. The Values Voter Summit in Washington, D.C. is September 21st through the 23rd. Sponsored in part by AFA Action, the summit will encourage